Vasudevaya. Janmadhyasya yatam vayaditaratascha tirsavigaswara. Tene brahma rudaya adikavaye mujanchija suraya. Tejo varimrida jata vinimajo jatra trisagomrusya. Dhamnasvena sada nirastakuhakam satyang param vimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
All-pervading personality of God.
O all-pervading personality of Godhead.
From my respectful obeisance unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
The primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universe.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahma.
It's the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
The original living being.
the original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
as one is bewildered by the illusory representations
of water seen on fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, of land seen to water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universes,
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of nature,
appear factual although they are unreal.
appear factual although the unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory representation of the
I
material
meditate
world.
upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute
Dharma
truth.
projita kaitravudra
Dharma prujita kaitavutra
paramo nirmatsaranam satam
paramo nirmasaranam satam
vedyam vastavam atravastu
Vedyam vastavam astravastu
shivadanta patrayon mulanam
Shivaram taputrayam
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Srimad Bhagavatam
Kim Vaparer Ishvaraha
Kim Vaparirishvara
Sadyo Hridi Avarudyate
Sadyurudya Varudya Titra
Kriti Bihi Sususubhistakshana,
Kritivishushushubhistatkanat,
completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth,
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in its maturity,
This is a beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by great sage Vyasadeva's maturity.
is sufficient in itself for God realization.
It's sufficient itself for God
What is the
realization.
need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As one is attentive, submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
by this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror kalitam phalam,
sukhamukat amrita dravya samyatam,
sukhamukhar amritadrava sangitam,
pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam,
muhur ahorasikabu vibhavakaha.
mura hora sikha bhuvi bhavuka.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad
the
Bhagavatam,
mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures.
the mature fruit, the desired truth, Vedic
It
literature.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit is even more tasteful,
Therefore, this fruit is even more tasteful.
although its nectar and juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectar and juice was relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrivantam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Puya Shavana Kirtana.
Hridyantak Stohi Badrani,
Hridyantasto Ihyabadrani.
Vidunati Srihit Satam.
Vidhu Noti Surit
To hear
Satam.
about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To To hear about Krishna from the Vedic literatures.
or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
Or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad Gita.
Is it self-righteous activity?
It is self-righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's
acts
heart.
as a best-wishing friend,
Acts as the best wishing
and
friend.
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
And purifies devotees who constantly engage in hearing with him.
Nasta prayesu abhadresu
Nasta praishva bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
nityam bhagavata sevaya
bhagavati utamasloke
bhagavati tamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
bhakti bhavati nastiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarachastamo bhava
Tato rajastamo bhava
kamaloba dayaschaye
kamalobhadaya
cheta etara navidam
chita tayarana
stitvam sattve prasidati.
sitam sadve prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
Development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasanna manaso
Evam prasanna manas
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti
Bhagavad
Yogata
Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in position of
becomes
good,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes alive with devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Granti
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Siddhyante Sarvasam
Siyante Chasya Karmani
Siddhyante Sachakarmani
Drista Evatmanishware.
Druta Evatmanishvari.
Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of material affection
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshram samagramam,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
understanding the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of God perfectly.
can one understand the science of God.
Can one understand the science of Krishna, yeah. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse number 21. Sarve vayam tavad iha maheta
Sarve vayam tavadiyas mahita
kalevaram yavad aso vihaya
kale varam yavadaso vihaya
lokam param virajaskam vishokam
lokam param virajaskam vishokam
yasyat yayam bhagavata pradana.
yasya tyayayam bhagavata pradana.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. We shall all wait here until the foremost devotee of the Lord, Maharaj Parikshit, returns to the supreme planet, which is completely free from all mundane contamination and all kinds of lamentation. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Beyond the limitation of the material creation, which is compared to the cloud in the sky, there is the Paravyoma, or the spiritual sky, full of planets called Vaikuntha Lokas. Such Vaikuntha planets are also differently known as the Purushottama Loka, Achyuta Loka, Trivikrama Loka, Rishikesha Loka, Keshava Loka, Aniruddha Loka, Madhava Loka, Pradumna Loka, Sankarsana Loka, Shidara Loka, Vasudeva Loka, Ayodhya Loka, Dwarka Loka, and many other millions of spiritual lokas wherein the personality of Godhead predominates. All the living entities there are liberated souls with spiritual bodies as good as that of the Lord. There is no material contamination. everything there is spiritual, and therefore there is nothing objectively lamentable. They are full of transcendental bliss and are without birth, death, old age, and disease. And amongst all the above-mentioned Vaikuntha lokas, there is one supreme loka called Goloka Vrindavana, which is the abode of Lord Sri Krishna and his specific associates. Maharaj Parikshit was destined to achieve this particular loka, and the great rishis assembled there could foresee it. All of them consulted among themselves about the great departure of the great king, and they lamented. They lamented to see him up to the... they wanted... There's some letters missing here. They wanted to see him up to the last moment, because they would no more be able to see such a great devotee of the Lord. When a great devotee Lord passes away, there is nothing to be lamented, because a devotee is destined to enter into the kingdom of God. But the sorry plight is that such great devotees leave our sight, and therefore there is every reason to be sorry. As the Lord is rarely to be seen by our present eyes, so also are the great devotees. The great rishis, therefore, correctly decided to remain on the spot till the last moment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Well, waiting till the last moment is a sign of love. And we should learn from these verses not only how to leave the body, but also how to respect a person who's a great devotee. And there's different ways of showing one's respect. And one of them is being there and witnessing the transcendental activities of the pure devotee right before they leave this world. Of course, there's Vani and Vapu. So Vani is more important than Vapu. That is, following the instructions of the pure devotee is more important than directly serving the devotee. Because I remember when Prabhupada left this planet, not very long after that, a large number of devotees left the movement for different reasons. So, some of those reasons, I can't say that they were valid, but in the minds of the devotees that left, they were valid. Of course, Prabhupada had said several times, and one time I also was present when he said never leave ISKCON or Krishna consciousness. Yeah, he actually said ISKCON. So that penetrated my heart, and I had made a vow to myself that if I ever left, I would commit suicide. So it's definitely a difficult thing to, after associating with Prabhupada, to want to leave his movement, which is not different than him. Although in the material world there's always going to be difficulties. That's the nature of it. And those difficulties are summarized very nicely in the Bhagavatam so that we can understand. In fact, there's a very important point about this, and that is that in this material life, which is mostly miserable, and a few moments of happiness are illusory because they're not eternal. They're just transitory. So that makes one, and because there are a few moments of happiness, one's willing to tolerate all the other moments of misery, which is another trick of nature or Maya. So material life is summarized as eating, sleeping, sex, and fear. It's also summarized as birth, death, old age, and disease. It's also summarized as Adi-daivika, Adi-atvika, Adi-bodhika. And it's also summarized as a life of running after happiness outside of oneself when happiness is within. So these are all different types of summaries. And then it's also summarized as pavarga, papa, ba, ma. Working hard, so hard that one's foaming in the mouth, and after such hard work and such exhaustion, there's disappointment, and then after that, there is fear, and after that, there's death. So these are all ways of summarizing material life, the real nature of material life, which is miserable. As we've said before, no one is born laughing. Everyone is born crying, And at the moment of death, everyone is pretty miserable. So, except in rare cases. So, this description of material life is also, validated by Krishna himself. Brahma bhuvana loka punar avartin original. Mama petya tukontya punar janma navidyate. From the highest planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest, all are places of misery, where there's repeated birth and death. And anityam asukam lokam. It's a place that's temporary, it's not eternal, and it's full of sukha, full of misery. So Krishna also clearly says that the material world is a place of misery. And the symptom of the people who are destined to suffer is identifying with the body. Although we have an eternal soul, people ignore the knowledge of the eternal soul and become convinced that there's only this body. And then when one identifies with the body, they begin to feel the effects of chastisement and praise. And then, based on that, a person will identify somebody as an enemy and another person as a friend. And he wants to chastise the enemy and welcome the friend. So this creation of friends and enemies is a result of one's bodily conception of life. So this is all advanced psychology. They don't really teach this in such clear terms in psychology classes. Yeah, of course they teach so many things, but the Bhagavatam is much more advanced in understanding the real situation in the material world. So, therefore, yesterday we went over a few points that were important, and that was where Prahlad Maharaj says in 7th Canto, 10th chapter, 2nd verse, he says, "My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because I was born in an atheistic family, I am naturally attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, kindly do not tempt me with these illusions." In other words, Lord Nrsingadev was offering Prahlad any benediction he wanted because the Lord was so pleased by his service. So here Prahlad's saying, don't tempt me with these illusory, let's say, pleasures of the material world. I am very much afraid of material conditions. He says that, although he also said, I'm not afraid of you, my Lord. Although everybody else is afraid of you, I'm not afraid of you. I know who you are. You're the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing in this wonderful, unimaginable form, half lion, half man, and you killed my father just like someone might kill an insect. Although everybody was afraid of my father, all the devatas, including Indra, and all the devatas are all afraid, and Brahma also. But you killed him like a little insect. And therefore now everyone's afraid of you, but I'm not afraid of you. But I am afraid of material conditions, and I desire to be liberated from materialistic life. He doesn't mean liberated like in the sense of going back to Godhead. He says, I want to be liberated from materialistic life. It is for this reason that I've taken shelter of your lotus feet. So Prabhupada says that materialistic life means attachment to the body and everything in relationship to the body. This attachment is based on lusty desires for sense gratification, specifically sexual enjoyment. Okay, so we read this yesterday, but I wanted to emphasize it and go a little further today. And that is, so that was 710.2. But in 7th chapter, 7th canto, 9th chapter, 24th verse, Prahlad Maharaj says, "My dear Lord, now I have complete experience concerning worldly opulence, mystic power, longevity, and other material pleasures enjoyed by all living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the ants." So when it mentions longevity here, it's very interesting. You see today there's a lot of publicity about life extension. And then some people even say death is optional. If you take our products, like I have a friend who has a company that personalizes probiotics according to your body, your particular body. They make a special blend of different probiotics so that you can live forever. And it costs about $1,500 a month. You have to pay them to keep making newer and newer blends of probiotics as your body changes. And how do they know how your body is changing? You have to continually send them samples of your stool. So he's a very clever person and very successful materially. And of course, what are they peddling? What are they selling? What snake oil are they selling? They're selling longevity, life extension, so you can live longer in this body. Is that true, though? No, you can't live 1 minute longer than what you're destined to live. But they make you feel or think that it's possible. That's how people make money. They make you believe something that is not actually true. And based on that, they sell you products. So you can reach that goal, which will never be reached. Very interesting. So he says that as powerful time, you destroy them all. That is, longevity, material pleasures, opulence, mystic power, and so forth. Therefore, because of my experience, I do not wish to possess them. My dear Lord, I request you to place me in touch with your pure devotee and let me serve him as a sincere servant. So, Prabhupada says, by studying Srimad Bhagvatam, every intelligent man can get experience like that of Prahlad Maharaj through the historical incidents mentioned in this great literature of spiritual knowledge. So that's what we're doing now. We're hearing about Maharaj Parikshit, but previously we heard about Yudhisthira Maharaj, and then we heard about Arjuna, and we heard about Narada Muni, and we heard about Bhismadev, and we heard about many, many other great devotees. And then we also heard about Asvatthama, and we heard about, we're going to hear about Ravana, and we hear about Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. So we're hearing both sides of the story, you know, the success side and the failure side. You have to understand that. It's just like it says, Vidyam cha yas yastad vedo bayam svaha. Avidyaya vinitaram avidyaya return. In other words, one should cultivate knowledge or vidya and avidya simultaneously, so that avidya doesn't overwhelm you. You recognize it right away and you avoid it. Okay. Vidyayamritam asnute. So, therefore, to save oneself, one must take shelter of a pure devotee. Okay, so we also read this yesterday, but then there's some interesting points that have to be understood. And therefore, Prabhupada makes a point in the 7th canto, 5th chapter, 23rd and 24th verse, that one should offer their body, mind, and words to Lord Vishnu. And therefore, Prabhupada says, fruitive workers first perform some pious activities and then formally or officially offer the results to Vishnu. So an example of that would be the Satyanarayana Puja, which is a puja that's offered to Lord Vishnu. Then Prabhupada says, the real devotee, however, first offers his surrender to Krishna with his body, mind, and words, and then uses his body, mind, words for the service of Krishna as Krishna desires. Now, what is the difference between these two statements? They're both offerings to Lord Vishnu, right? And Vishnu is considered the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the first explanation, it's offering to Lord Vishnu, and the second point here is the real devotee, however, first offers his surrender to Krishna. He didn't say Vishnu now, he said Krishna. So, the performers of sacrifice for Vishnu, like in the Satyanarayana Puja, act for their own benefit and their own satisfaction of their senses. But one should act for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So that's the difference. When one is, even though they're worshipping Lord Vishnu in a Satyanarayana Puja, they're doing it for their own satisfaction. And therefore, as I've said before, in the beginning of the Satyanarayana Puja, the priest will have you repeat the word mama, meaning this sacrifice is for me, right? So that closes the loop right there. The whole thing is for sense gratification, although they're making an offering to Lord Vishnu. Have you, any of you performed the Satyanarayana Puja? Am I saying the right thing here? Did I ask you to say mama in the beginning? Yes? Yeah. Yes, Prabhu? Yes, Prabhu. So here Prabhupada in the 7th canto, 5th chapter, 23rd and 24th verse is differentiating between the worshippers of Lord Vishnu for sense gratification and the worshippers of Lord Krishna for Krishna's satisfaction and not for their own senses and satisfaction. Then again, in 7.5.27, he says, murderers of brahmanas are afflicted by tuberculosis. Drunkards become toothless. Gold thieves have diseased nails, and those who have sex with the wife of a superior get leprosy and similar skin diseases. Wow. You see, you can learn everything simply by reading the Bhagavatam. You don't have to go to medical school. You don't have to go to economic school. You don't have to get a PhD in economics from the University of Pennsylvania, which has a very high-rated economic PhD. And you don't have to get any PhD from any university. You simply read Srimad Bhagvatam. You'll get all knowledge and real knowledge. And you'll be able to read signs. You'll be able to evaluate a person very quickly, just in a few minutes, because of all the knowledge you've received from Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so Therefore, even though someone worships Lord Vishnu, it's possible, as we see, that they're doing it for a selfish reason, not actually to please the Lord. Therefore, when Lord Chaitanya came, he said, "Na danam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam va jagadisha kamaye, mamavart, mamavartante, manusya, janmani, janmanishware." Yeah, he said that I don't want any amount of wealth, I don't want any number of followers, or a lot of children, I don't want any fame or anything like that. All I want is to serve you birth after birth. So I don't want liberation either. So this is the culture of Krishna consciousness, as opposed to these other cultures which are based on wanting to stay in the material world. Then, in the 7th chapter, canto 6th chapter, 5th verse, it says, "Therefore, while in material existence, which is characterized as bhavam asrita, a person fully competent to distinguish wrong from right must endeavor to achieve the highest goal of life as long as the body is stout and strong and is not embarrassed by dwindling." So, Prahlad Maharaj, he says at one point, Komaran acharet pragya. This word pragya, it refers to one who's experienced and who can distinguish right from wrong. So, children should be taught right from the beginning of their life, right from wrong. Such a person should not waste his energy and valuable human lifetime simply working like a cat or dog to develop his economic condition. Well, today it's the opposite. Oftentimes, kids are not taught what is right and what is wrong, but they're just trained to make money by getting different degrees in these schools. And therefore, they're being cursed to make many mistakes in life and to basically have a failure in life. Because most people will stick to the economic track their whole lifetime. And so then much more is going to be explained about this now. This one word, bhavam asrita, the verse says, Tato yateta kushala shemaya bhavam asrita. So bhavam asrita means the same thing as bhayam asrita. That is, this bhayam asrita means the materialistic way of life in which one is always fearful at every step because there's danger in every step. Materialistic life is full of anxieties and fear, or bhayam. So, yeah, it's also said in the Bhagavatam, Samasritaye padapalava plavam punya yaso murari. Mahat padam punya yaso murari. Bhavan buddhir vatsa padam param padam padam yat vipadam natisam. It says, for those who have accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the Mura demon, the ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoof-print. Their goal is Param Padam, the Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. So that's the material world. There's danger at every step. So then Prabhupada explains that accepting the bhavam asrita, that is, that there's always a fearful condition every step of life. Therefore, this bhavam means basically being embarrassed by birth, death, old age, and disease. And therefore, one is full of anxieties all the time. In childhood, in teenage life, in mature life, in midlife, in old age, at the moment of death. Prabhupada says that although in the Vedic system there are social divisions, brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Sudras, and so forth. But everyone can engage in devotional service. Just like we see here, people have different types of work, but everyone can come to the temple and engage in devotional service. So if one wants to live without devotional service, then their status as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaisya, Sudra has no meaning at all. It means nothing. Because without devotional service, one does not develop the proper qualities of understanding right from wrong, of always choosing dharma over adharma. So, therefore, there's a saying, stanad brasta patantya adha. Whether one is in a higher or lower division, one certainly falls down for want of Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter if you're the richest person in the world or the poorest person in the world. If you don't have Krishna consciousness, you fall down. So, a sane person, therefore, is always fearful of falling from the position of Krishna consciousness. This is a regulative principle. So one should not fall from his exalted position. The highest goal of life can be achieved as long as one's body is stout and strong. We should therefore live in such a way that we keep ourselves always healthy and strong in mind and intelligence, so that we can distinguish the goal of life from a life full of problems. A thoughtful man must act in this way, learning to distinguish right from wrong, and thus attain the goal of life. This is Prabhupada speaking very eloquently and very correctly. So, we should try and maintain health and strength, not only physically, but mentally and spiritually. So that spiritual strength comes from following the regulative principles strictly, and also regularly attending temple programs, especially the classes. So, therefore, one does not get confused and begin to act irresponsibly or negligently, and go down the slippery slope of being a devotee to being a karmi again. Okay. However, there's more, and that is another verse that explains in 7th Canto, 13th chapter, 25th verse, and it says, in the course of evolutionary process, which is caused by fruitive activities due to undesirable material sense gratification, I have received this human form of life, which can lead to the heavenly planets, or to liberation, or to the lower species, or to rebirth among human beings. So this is Prahlad Maharaj speaking. So, this is a great saintly person that was met by Parikshit Maharaj. Was it Parikshit or Prahlad? No, Prahlad Maharaj, yes. So Prahlad Maharaj, while he encountered a saintly person who was living like a python. So what does a python do? It just stays in one place with its mouth open and waits till something walks into his mouth. In other words, he doesn't proactively go out and seek food. He waits, and then startles some poor animal or whatever that comes his way, and kills it and eats it. So, Prabhupada says, all living entities within this material world are undergoing the cycle of birth and death according to the laws of nature. This struggle of birth and death is in different species may be called the evolutionary process. But in the Western world, it has been wrongly explained. Darwin's theory of evolution from animal to man is incomplete, because the theory does not present the reverse condition, namely, evolution from man to animal. In this verse, however, evolution has been very well explained on the strength of Vedic authority. Human life, which is obtained in the course of the evolutionary process, is a chance for elevation. It's called swarga apavarga, or for degradation, which is called tiraskam punar asyacha. If one uses this human form of life properly, he can elevate himself to the higher planetary systems where material happiness is many thousands of times better than on this planet. Or one may cultivate knowledge by which to become free from the evolutionary process and be reinstated in one's original spiritual life. This is called apavarga, or liberation. So pavarga is working hard, foaming in the mouth, being very disappointed and frustrated, then becoming fearful, and then dying. Right? And apavarga is the opposite. You don't have to work hard, like a beast of burden, and you don't have to foam in the mouth and be exhausted from your work, and mentally and physically drained, and you don't need to take pills to keep you going, or drink coffee, Starbucks every morning, every afternoon, every evening. My father used to drink 12 cups of coffee every day. Of course, it ruined his life, his health. Anyway, you don't have to do that. And then you don't get disappointed because you're peaceful and you're happy, simply engaged in devotional service. And even though you may work outside, you don't go crazy to become the next Bill Gates. This one person came to our restaurant, my sweet Lord, and I was talking to him, and I said, "What's your goal in life?" He said, "I want to be as rich as Bill Gates." I said, "Okay." I said, "What are you trying to do to reach your goal?" He said, "I'm smoking marijuana." I said, "What makes you think that by smoking marijuana you'll become like Bill Gates?" He said, "Because I know that 3/4 of the workers, or the IT guys in Microsoft, smoke marijuana." I said, "Well, even if that was true, which it is not, it doesn't mean that if you smoke marijuana, you will become like Bill Gates." And I said, "But anyway, 3/4 of the people in Microsoft do not smoke marijuana. In fact, the ones that are most successful usually avoid things like that, and they're very disciplined in their habits so that they can do all the work that they have to do." But you see what crazy things people believe, right? But the craziest thing follows right now. The word tiraskam refers to degraded life. Human life, of course, provides an opportunity for the best living conditions. As Western people think, from the monkeys come the human beings, who are more comfortably situated. However, if one does not utilize his human life for swarga, or apavarga, he falls again to the degraded life of animals like dogs and hogs. Therefore, a sane human being must consider whether he will elevate himself to the higher planets, prepare to free himself from the evolutionary process altogether, or travel again through the evolutionary process in higher and lower grades of life. If one works piously, one may be elevated to the higher planetary systems, or achieve liberation and return home back to Godhead. But otherwise, one may be degraded to a life as a dog, a hog, and so on. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 9:25, Yanti Deva Ratan Devan Pichin Yanti Pritivrata Bhutani Antributeja Yanti Madhya Jinopimam. So, there's some people are going to go to demigods, some people are going to go to the pitas, worshipping ghosts, and some people might remain as human beings, but my devotees, it says, they come back to me. They go back to Godhead. So there are different destinations. You can go stay where you are, go up, go down, or go back to Godhead. So here it says, those interested in being elevated to the higher planetary systems, Devaloka or Swargaloka, must prepare to do so. Similarly, if one wants liberation and wants to return home back to Godhead, he should prepare himself for that purpose. Now, Prabhupada explains the purpose of the Krishna consciousness movement. He says, our Krishna consciousness movement is therefore the highest movement for the benediction of human society, because this movement is teaching people how to go back home, back to Godhead. In Bhagavad Gita 13:22, it is clearly stated that different forms of life are obtained by association with the three modes of material nature. Purusha, Paraparta, and then Karanam Gunasangasya Sadasadyoni Janmasu. According to one's association with the material qualities of goodness, passion, and ignorance in this life, in one's next life, one receives an appropriate body. Modern civilization does not know that because of varied association in material nature, the living entity, although eternal, is placed in different disease conditions known as the many species of life. Modern civilization is unaware of the laws of nature. Now, this is a very important point, and you can understand this immediately. Just ask your kids if, when they were taught Darwin's theory of evolution, there was ever any idea in that theory that one could devolve and not evolve. In other words, yes, he says everything evolves, but they don't say that things can actually devolve also, that you can be a human being and the next life you can be an ant, right? They don't explain that. And modern civilization does not know this because they don't understand the influence of the modes of material nature. In fact, they don't even talk about that, goodness, passion, and ignorance. As long as we're influenced by the modes of material nature, we cannot get out of the material entanglement. And therefore it says, Yesham tvanta gatam papam jananam punyas karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam jitarataha. Only those persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated, only they can engage in devotional service. So, how do you completely eradicate your sinful reactions? Karmani nirdahati kantu chabakti bhajam. It's explained in Brahma Samhita. It's also explained in Bhagavad Gita. It's only by devotional service. Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavanyas jasmi tatprata tatomam tatprato gyatva vishate tad anantaram. 1855. It's only by devotional service that one can become free from the influence of birth and death and modes of material nature and attain the transcendental position of Brahman. See? Therefore, mamchayovi bicharina bhakti yogina sevate sagunam samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. If one engages in devotional service and does not fall down under any circumstance, they transcend the modes of material nature and they attain the position of Brahman, or naso chitina kangsati, no more lamentation, no more hankerings, and naso chitina kangsati, samak sarve sabute su, being completely equal to all living entities, not making friends and enemies. Even though you may have many enemies, but you do not react. You treat all people equally and with respect. Therefore, one attains this transcendental position, even in this world, even in this body. Iha yasya harir dasya karmana manasajira akilasvapi avastasu jivan muktasa uchyate. If one engages the mind, the senses, the body, intelligence, everything in the service of Krishna, they become jivan mukta even in this body, in this world, a liberated soul. So, therefore, modern civilization does not know that because of varied association in material nature, the living entity, although eternal, is placed in different disease conditions known as the many species of life. Modern civilization is unaware of the laws of nature. This is the law of nature. If you associate with the mode of ignorance, you're going to take birth in the animal kingdom, or the insect kingdom, or the fish kingdom, or the bird kingdom, but it's not going to be as a human being. And if you act always passionately and had and a little bit of goodness, well, you might maybe get a human body again, but it will not be very, very desirable, because there are many wild or savage species of human beings, and plus there are demons that are human. See? And if you act piously, you may be able to take birth again as a human being on the earth, or even going to the higher planets. But you always remain a prisoner in birth, death, old age, and disease. So modern civilization doesn't understand, but yet they're full of ignorance. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarva saha hankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. They think that they're in control, but actually they're being controlled. That is our situation, every one of us. It says, the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the performer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Bhagavad Gita 3:27. This is the first thing we should teach our kids, the influence of the modes of material nature, and how even the mode of goodness is not good. But from the mode of goodness, one can, with proper training, come to the mode of transcendental goodness. That's good. But most people don't even come up to the mode of goodness. They just stay in modes of passion and ignorance. Maybe in kindergarten, in first grade, second grade, third grade, a little bit mode of goodness, a little mixed with some passion and ignorance. But as soon as you come up to middle school, high school, you're firmly established in passion and ignorance, and go to college, it's all ignorance. No goodness at all ignorance. Everyone's running around thinking about making money and having sense gratification. Right? So that's the pinnacle of education. Therefore, it's better not to have any education at all. Just learn how to read and write, but be an honest person and chant Hare Krishna, so you can go back to Godhead. None of those other people are going to go back to Godhead. They're going to go back to hell by their sinful activities. So the bewildered spirit soul, under the influence of the three modes of material nature, thinks himself the performer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. And Prabhupada says, every living entity is under the full control of the stringent laws of material nature, but rascals think themselves independent. Actually, however, they cannot be independent. This is foolishness. A foolish civilization is extremely risky, meaning dangerous, and therefore the Krishna consciousness movement is trying to make people aware of their fully dependent condition under the stringent laws of nature, and is trying to save them from being victimized by strong Maya, which is Krishna's external energy. Behind the material laws is the supreme controller, Krishna. Mayadakshena prakriti suyate sacharachana. Therefore, if one surrenders unto Krishna, mam evaye prapadyante mayametam tarantite, one may immediately be freed from the control of external nature. Sagunam samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. This should be the aim of life. So don't you think that children should be taught what the aim of life is as early as possible? Understand the influence of the modes of material nature and strive to become transcendental to those modes. And the only way to do that is by engagement in practical devotional service. I was talking to one mother recently. She didn't really bring her kid, one of her kids, or both of her kids, to the temple that much, and they never really stayed to be in the Sunday school or any of the classes. She took them to other places where they had some training, and bhajans and other things. But at one point, her son told her, "I don't believe in God anymore." This was when he was, I think, a junior in high school, and then he graduated, and he went to college, and he's out there somewhere, So, and this person was regretting it. that they weren't able to instill Krishna consciousness in their child. You shouldn't be in that position. There's ample information now, especially what we're hearing. To educate a child is a big responsibility. It's not, and it's not an easy thing in this atmosphere that we're living in. Anyway, we'll talk some more about it. There's a lot more about this subject. We'll stop right now. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. So, just wanted some clarification or more detail around, like in the 18th chapter, 54th verse, it ends with saying that Mad Bhaktim Labade Param.
Yeah.
So, the Lord is saying that once someone reaches the Brahma Bhuta stage, that's when we achieve the pure bhakti? Or is it the pure bhakti takes there? Or, so
no, you attain the platform of Brahman. That means you're free of the influence of modes of material nation, but there's still other things you have to do to come to pure bhakti. You have to understand neutrality and equality. So equality means that we are all spirit souls, qualitatively one with Krishna, quantitatively different. And the neutrality is that there's going to be happiness and distress in material life. It should not affect you. You remain neutral. That's higher than what's being described there. Nasochati na kangsati. Beyond that, samak sarve sabute, so you're equal to all living entities. Yeah, so it's starting to talk about equality. But then there's a neutrality where you're not disturbed by whatever happens to you or in the material world. You continue your devotional service. Right? And then eventually you develop pure love of God. That's a stage of eternal liberation. And where your devotion is not like the Satyanarayana Puja devotion. Right? It's very interesting how Prabhupada delineates all these things, you know. It explains them in depth.
A lot of nuances. In the way we grew up is like everything is bhakti, you know.
Yeah, everything's bhakti. Satyanarayana Puja is also bhakti, right? But actually it's not.
What's the underlying desire?
Yeah, there's something there, but it's not. I mean, even the story of the Brahmana, it's all materialistic.
Materialistic, you know? Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, it takes a long time to understand all these things, because after you've been programmed in one way, to hear something that's diametrically different is a shock. And most people are just, it's too much of a shock. They can't handle it.
I can relate to that. When I first went to Chowpatty temple, and I was in 2007, Madhavchandra Prabhu took me there. So I was hearing a class, and there obviously, you know, all the concepts, everything that were taught were like completely opposite to my views at that time.
Yeah.
So it took a long time to...
Of course. But see, there's one thing I haven't explained yet. I'm going to get to it. That is, Prabhupada clearly explains how we should deal with money and material success. He clearly explains it. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, I didn't get to that today. I had that ready. And that is, well, you can read this for tomorrow. It's the 7th chapter, it's 7th canto, 13th chapter, 32nd verse. 7, 13, 32. Where he talks about how to handle money. And he begins by talking about greedy capitalists. So, like I said yesterday, I mean, there were many very, very wealthy devotees in the past, you know, much more wealthier than anything that's imaginable in this world. But they were not affected by it. They used it properly in the service of Krishna, right? So there's nothing wrong with money. Even in English, the saying is not money is the root of all evil. It said the love of money is the root of all evil. So that's implying the greediness, the love of money. You should love God, not the money. You should use the money in the service of God. So see, even in English, they have the... I used to think the saying was, money is the root of all evil. But then I realized it doesn't say that. It says the love of money is the root of all evil. You see, it could take a long time to realize things. And over time, your mind gets blurred and you change it, and then you think, all money is bad. No, it's not a fact. Being crazy about making money is bad, but money should be used in the service of Krishna, and that includes your maintenance also. Right. As we get older, our material responsibilities diminish, and therefore you don't have the same need of money as before, right? But while you're in the developing phase and your kids are young, and you have a right to spend a decent amount of money to maintain yourself so you're comfortable, right? But at a certain point you reach a plateau that you keep steady and don't try and go beyond it, and then you downsize, right? So even when you downsize, you could be making hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Look, the guys that started Home Depot. They started very humbly, and they built it up, and now they're all retired, right? But they're all extremely wealthy, right? And they're usually get into charity and different types of giving money away, right? But they're not necessarily Krishna conscious. So, yeah, someone that can be Krishna conscious can start with nothing, build up a huge business, reach a plateau where they maintain a certain level, and then downsize. But when they downsize, that means there's way more money available to use in Krishna consciousness. Right? So the handling of money is also not bad if it's handled properly. So we'll talk more about that. Haribol.